What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. Okay, let's go part 2 of the mailbag. At John Middlekauff is the Instagram. Fire in those DMs and get your questions answered here on the show. We'll start with Tyler. Speaking of the game tonight, I've had this discussion with my dad a few years ago, and I figure I'd ask here as well. Who is the biggest draft bust of all time? My vote is Trey Lance. He's playing in the Hall of Fame game for the Chargers. Not the Niners or the Cowboys, but the Chargers. They spent 3 first-round picks to get him. My dad is a big Niner fan, couldn't accept that answer, and said it had to be Jamarcus Russell. What is your opinion? This is a good question. And I think here's the key. I'm not putting Trey Lance and Jamarcus Russell in the same lane. Jamarcus Russell played at LSU, had big-time talent, didn't try, was on the purple drank, didn't study, didn't give a you-know-what, and was terrible and was out of the league in a couple years. But no one disputed, especially back then the way the league was, his physical attributes and his ability to play. He just did not care. He did not try. But the guy had played at LSU. He had won big games in college. Like, this guy was a real prospect. Trey Lance, to me, a little bit of a Fugazi prospect. Played at a small school. Did not have Division I offers to play quarterback. And I'm not talking a small school division. Played in D1 AA at North Dakota State. And he was a backup to other guys that played in the NFL. Started for 1 year in 2019. They did not lose a game because their ability, they dominate that level. Well, 2020 happened. He did not have a season because in D1 AA with the Wuhan lab and the Rona ripping, they canceled football. This is not the SEC or the Big Ten. This was D1 AA. They canceled it. So he did not play. He actually played 1 game, and it was a joke. So I do think if he had played more D1 AA, would he really have gone in the top 5? Because he's just not very good. And like you said, he's playing in the Hall of Fame game starting. Harbaugh's actually throwing him a bone. He can't win the backup job anywhere. He can't be a backup in the NFL. But that's not his fault. He just wasn't that good. And I think in a normal circumstance, in 2025, a guy that played multiple years in D1 AA, I don't know if he would have been drafted that high. Like, a huge part of the reason the Niners drafted him, weird year, they were desperate, they loved his character, but physically, I was going to practices early on in his career. Not very accurate. His athleticism doesn't really translate. Like, I put his failure on the 49ers. And just that 2020. Like, Jamarcus Russell failed not because of the Raiders, because of Jamarcus Russell. Like, some guys just, Johnny Manziel. Like, he just didn't try. If you watch his documentary on Netflix, he's like, yeah, I just didn't give a shit. I was just getting wasted, went to Vegas. He just, quit. Trey Lance is trying. Trey Lance has really tried. Trey Lance is like a high-character guy. People like him. He just isn't good enough. Like, that to me is more on the team. So when I think the word draft bust, I think of a guy that, did not live up to his potential. Like, some guys, that guy should not have been drafted there. Like Solomon Thomas. The 49ers drafted him 3rd overall. Solomon Thomas should have been a 3rd-round pick. And he would have he's going to have a 12, 13-year career. But he just never should have been drafted that high. Mitch Trubisky. Is he a bust? He was number 2 overall. He's not that good. Kind of like Trey Lance. I put that more in the Bears. He has no touch. He's just not very instinctive. So it's he never was going to be that good. Where it's Jamarcus Russell could have been good. There are players that could have been good. That if you do not try, and that's the reason you live up to it. Are you a bust if you get injured? That one's hard for me. But I do think when you literally just don't try, that to me is a bust on the player. Good question. I'd put Jamarcus Russell near or Ryan Leaf. Ryan Leaf was a real prospect, right? He was a real talent. Trey Lance was not at the level in which he was traded for and drafted. I mean, he's an NFL, fringe third string practice squad guy. Question for the pod. With the possibility of Netflix being a part of the NFL TV rights deal, is it safe to assume Netflix stock would skyrocket? Why? That's a good question. Let's check in on Netflix stock right now. One of my great regrets is never going all in on this like 5 years ago. Netflix. So its 52-week low is $587. Its 52-week high is $1,300. It's currently sitting at a shade under $1,200 a share. So it has gone up in a 5-year period, 150%. In a 10-year period, almost well over 9x. So is buying the NFL going to dramatically change the amount of people that subscribe to Netflix? It would definitely help. I do wonder, let's say opening night. Chiefs Chargers play week 2. I actually think that's a good example. It's on YouTube. What is the difference in terms of the amount of people that watch opening night, which I would imagine Cowboys Eagles is on NBC Thursday night, and the YouTube game 2 in Brazil on Friday? Because it's different. You got to subscribe to Netflix. But I do think there is, anyone will tell you in the business, being on Fox, being on CBS, being on ABC, NBC is a game changer. There are still people that don't, I guess, have the internet or cable or whatever. I just don't know any human being in my life, any human being, that includes my mother, who's in her late 70s, who does not have Netflix / watch it. So I don't know what that, it won't hurt, but I don't know if it's like a 30% increase. Pro golfers drive for show and putt for some dough. And the easiest way to make you some dough, betting on this week's tournament at DraftKings Sportsbook. From the opening round, Championship Sunday, DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered with live betting, player props, and so much more. If you've never bet on golfers before, it's easy. You can take them to win, you can take them to top 10, you can take them to top 20. Some guys this week I like. We're making the push toward the FedEx playoffs. Ricky Fowler has been playing good golf. Hammer him to top 20. Max Homa, another guy who is trending, top 20. Matt Fitzpatrick, also playing really well. If you want to get a little more aggressive, top 10. Jake Knapp as well. Just had a good week at the 3M. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the code JOHN. That's code JOHN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings, the crown is yours. Do you believe Odell Beckham Jr.'s career is over? If not, what organization and roster can you believe he can contribute to? How would you assess his career? I think he underachieved given the talent that he had. And part of that was the Giants, they fell apart when they traded him to Cleveland, and that thing did not work out. But if you go to YouTube, the first couple years of Odell Beckham, he was an elite talent. Punt returner, deep threat, could break tackles, his play speed. He was pretty special. Like, it wasn't just some flash in the pan. It was like, this fucking guy can play. Then he gets injured, and he's never quite the same. But I do think Cleveland, over the internet era, has been a place where people's careers can go to die. And I do think that really, really derailed his career. Is this now or never for Jordan Love? Will Packers fans see the controversial draft pick and ousting of Rodgers pay off? It's a great question. I don't think it's now or never for the guy, but there is tangible pressure on this franchise. New president. He did not hire the coach and the GM. The coach and the GM's futures are tied to this quarterback who they paid a lot of money, who's coming off a weird season that was banged up. Are they going to be good enough on offense to take the next step? Is this a team that went 1-5 in the division? So I don't think it's now or never, but I do think it's kind of now. Okay, it's time. Like, it's time for LaFleur. It's time for Jordan Love. It's time for this team. Like, this is a good year for them to win 12, 13 games and be a major factor in the playoffs. So desperate for football, I'm watching the Brady and Mahomes AFC Championship. How long until NFL teams adopt the golf-like simulator on the sideline for kickers? Right now, the guys kick into a net with no feedback. Is TrackMan like technology on the sideline against the rules? It's a great fucking question. I don't see how it would be given that they have iPads on the sidelines now. If you told me 10 years ago, or whatever the year was, that they started allowing like technology on the sideline, I don't see why you could have an iPad and look at the plays on offense or defense, but I can't have a track man for a guy to kick to know where it would go. I'm totally with you. Why can the kicker not have the ability to go, God, I'm missing that a little left? And honestly, I don't know, is there TrackMan technology that could do it with a football? Because if there is, I think we should institute that immediately. And there would be some owners like, I don't want to pay for this because it ain't cheap. But I'd be interested if there are kickers in the league that utilize any sort of technological advances like that, either in the offseason or with their team. But that's never thought about that. Great question. What are your expectations for Omarion Hampton in year one in Harbaugh's version of the Chargers? With Najee, can't even speak. We talked about this a little earlier. I don't think it's outrageous to go offensive rookie of the year. Could Hampton be a 1,300-yard rusher and have 10 plus touchdowns? Because he's pretty freaking good. So I would say offensive rookie of the year would be on the table for sure. In a recent interview at the Manning Passing Academy, Arch Manning said Burrow and Josh Allen are his favorite quarterbacks to watch. Even with the small sample size we've seen so far of Arch, do you notice any similarities in their style of playing showing up in his game? I've noticed that his footwork is crisp and he throws a nice, accurate deep ball and he's got nice speed. But other than that, I'm curious to hear your take. I maybe I'm being too harsh. I thought his arm, Josh Allen has an elite arm. Burrow does not, but Burrow's such a natural player and his motion is kind of over the top. To me, Arch, again, I have to study it a little stronger. Feels a little lower than Burrow's. Similar like Burrow, doesn't have a hose, but has a good enough arm. One thing that Arch has that's probably closer to Josh, different from Joe, is he can really move. He's a really, really good athlete, which makes sense. His dad, Cooper, I forget the exact disease or sickness he got, but he was going to Ole Miss to play wide receiver. So I think Arch is like I'm trying to think who a player. I mean, Josh Allen's a superb athlete. I think Arch's a really good athlete. Maybe a young Aaron Rodgers who could really, really move and throw, but he doesn't have the arm of Aaron. I'm trying to think of like physical comps. He's taller than that. I don't know. I gotta. I don't have a comp right now that makes sense in my head. And yesterday, Jimmy Haslam said, and he knows the Mannings really well. He said he expects Arch to play multiple seasons at Texas. I would imagine Arch, who, what year is he now? Going to be a redshirt sophomore. I think he's going to graduate from college, would be my guess. So part of staying 2 years would be like, I want to be a 2-year starter and I want to graduate from college. Mailbag question. John Dorsey. I've been following this guy because of his personality, and second, because of how little credit this guy gets from drafting some of the best players in the NFL. Baker, Kelsey, Tyreek, Nick Chubb, Mahomes. Even was the head scout for Aaron Rodgers. His ability to draft players early and late rounds is undeniable. But the fact he can't keep a job as a GM doesn't make sense. Every time he is canned, he's hired the next day as a head advisor or scout to another team. Now I understand he failed badly with coaches, but most of the time, that's not a GM's decision. He drafted the first Chiefs Super Bowl team, but nobody talks about that. What are your thoughts on him, and did you ever know John? Never met the guy. Maybe I have met him at the combine, like really briefly, when I was young. But there is no disputing John Dorsey's ability to evaluate football players. There was a reason when Andy went to Kansas City and's like, I'm not going to be the GM anymore. Hire John Dorsey and said, you run the personnel department. And the only guy they took from Kansas City or from Philly was Veach. He's like, I'm not stealing any of the guys. If you give me one, Veach is my guy, and took him. But I think Veach and Dorsey are similar in the sense of like they're very, very good at evaluating players. Now, part of being a GM, it's like, is John Dorsey good enough with the finances? Is John Dorsey good enough at dealing with the owners? Is John Dorsey good enough at dealing with the agents? Being a GM, the reason John Schneider is going to have a 20-year career in Seattle, the reason Howie Roseman is unreal, the reason Jason Light and Nick Casario, these guys have to do a lot of things. One problem with Trent Baalke is what Trent Baalke wanted to do? Close the door, turn off the lights, and watch film 24/7, 365. And then he realized I kind of got to play the politician. But he wasn't good at working with coaches. He was terrible at working with staffs. You got to be good at everything. And I do think, and again, I'm projecting a little bit. The reason he was fired in Kansas City was financially he wasn't good at managing the cap. And the owner, who is a money guy, finance major, was like, you're fired. I can't speak to what happened in Cleveland, but like just picking players, John Dorsey's good at that. But football's about a lot more than just picking players. I've been a Jets fan since '09. I'm 26. We haven't made the NFL playoffs since I was in middle school. I'm in the minority, and I'm not buying Aaron Glenn at all. Our brilliant owner just hired a good DC out of SF, the last hire, and his first NFL head coaching gig. And how did that go? I'm not forgetting. They needed something different. Aaron Glenn is talking hot to the media, and that's what these guys all do. They say they can handle it, but everyone's a hot shot till they get their ass kicked. I'm an OSU grad, so I'm excited to see Fields and Wilson this season. But other than that, my question is, why would I have any hope this year? We are the worst franchise in sports. Uh, I would say this about Aaron Glenn that's different than Robert Saleh. Aaron Glenn was a high level player, scouted, became a position coach, and then became one of the best defensive coordinators. Robert Saleh did not play in the NFL for 15, 20 years. I mean, Aaron Glenn's career, I think, was like 15, 16 years playing. I do think last year was kind of a masterpiece. Him winning that game with the random guys to win the division was remarkable to watch. So his ability to deal with players is pretty impressive. Robert Saleh had like 2 good years. Honestly, one, 2019 for the 49ers. The team was not good in 2020. It's hard to even judge 2020. Now, Robert Saleh was a good defensive coordinator, but was completely over his head with a lot of stuff and hadn't really been in a high level position for long in the NFL. I mean, he wasn't that far removed from being like a quality control assistant. Aaron Glenn, like, Google his resume. It's pretty impressive. Been with Sean Payton, been with Dan Campbell. Robert Saleh is not that far removed from like working for Gus Bradley. Kyle hired him because he couldn't get Vic Fangio. So I think Aaron Glenn is much more prepared for this job. That being said, I don't think you can win games with Justin Fields. Like, I do not expect the Jets to be good on offense. I just don't think. I think he's kind of proven like he just struggles in just a normal passing attack. Like Garrett Wilson, it's how's that going to go? I don't know. Now he got so much money, he might not care as much anymore, but most wide receivers want the rock. I'm interested in your thoughts on the trajectory of Jalen and Tua's career. You would be a fool to put Tua above Jalen in any quarterback ranking. But not too long ago, they were on the exact same team, and it was Jalen being benched and had a transfer in favor of Tua. Tua looked like clearly the better quarterback, at least in my eyes. I would say in everyone's eyes, including Nick Saban's. Do their completely different paths at this point surprise you? It's just a matter of where they landed, Tua's injuries, or is there something about Jalen's game that makes him a better fit in the NFL? Well, Tua, one, is just a small, bad athlete. So that doesn't always translate to the NFL, right? Tua can be accurate, but he's not super dynamic player. Like, what is Tua's best skill? Getting rid of the ball really quickly, accurately. He throws a decent deep ball. But like Jalen is a elite would be strong. That's like Michael Vick. But he is an excellent NFL athlete and runner of the football. He is a dynamic player with the ball in his hands, and he is an exceptional deep ball thrower. Then he plays on a team like obviously at quarterback. Who are your teammates? He has better teammates, but he has way more physical skills than Tua, right? And Tua, like, okay, are you going to pick you apart like the left-handed Drew Brees? We've seen him; he can't really do that. So I actually think Jalen has more physical attributes to have a higher ceiling than Tua, right? Even though at the same time, like, I struggle with this because I don't respect many people that like love talking about the past. Because I think it's easy to be like, well, in 2015, I was doing really well. My dad was a farmer in like the 70s and 80s and 90s, and like economic recessions back in the day would cripple people. So I knew a lot of people through my dad that had great times, were crushing it, and then would go bankrupt. Some people would be unfazed and they would just battle back and keep kicking ass and keep making money. And there were some people that, like, if I say like a family dinner, these names, they just resonate. They like still hold on to like what you did in 1988. It's like it's 2025 and they're still talking about this. And I think I'm not saying Tua's that way, but my point is this: we all get to a point in life where you might be with someone that person is better than you. There's no guarantee that they're still going to be better than you in 5 or 10 or 20 years, right? All of our professions are a little bit different. But like Jalen didn't let that moment when Tua was better than him define him. Now, part of that team specifically, Alabama had the best roster in the league, right? In the country. They had dominant offensive lines and elite wide receivers. So Tua was a way better passer those couple years. It was a no-brainer for Nick Saban to transition to Tua. But some guys get better. Listen, I didn't think Jalen, I thought Howie was insane for taking him in the second round. I would have taken him on like the fourth or fifth round and moved him to running back. I would have been wrong. Guys improve. And why a lot of people miss on players in the pros? Because they go, this guy's not good enough. Well, yeah, he's not good enough right now, but what can he be in 3 or 4 years? And if you get to the right place, you get with the right coach, you just naturally improve. All of a sudden, you're a 9-year starter. It's like, God, I didn't realize this guy was going to be that good. Part of the business. If there was an NFL draft of current coach quarterback combo packages, taking into account only for 2 years, 25 and 26, to try to go on a run, given that all the teams have equal rosters, which tandem would be the first 10 off the draft board? The purpose of this exercise that my buddies and I had to take into account both value of quarterback and head coach together and not separated. Well, I think you would just find guys with track records because if everything's equal, it's advantage the coach, right? Like one disadvantage a quarterback would have is if my team is not as good, right? But a coach can overcome guys because I can scheme you open. So if everything's the same, huge advantage for Andy Reid, huge advantage for Kyle and Sean McVay, right? Huge advantage for Jim Harbaugh, right? It's not as big of an advantage for average coaches, right? And that's where, it's clear who would go one. But I think like Sean McDermott's proven like he's been a pretty good coach with random guys with Josh. So how would they not be two? Same thing with John Harbaugh. Like I think it'd be 1, 2, 3. Those three combos. It'd be Josh, Lamar, Mahomes. Obviously, Mahomes would be one. But like, do you trust Zach Taylor? If you don't have Jamar Chase, I don't. I like Burrow, but I don't trust Zach Taylor. I'll tell you who'd go higher than you think. Would be like, well, everything's equal. I like my chances with Sean Payton, and he loves his quarterback. I'd say the same thing with Kyle and Purdy. You'd be like, well, there are big guys better than Purdy. Okay, but everything's equal. Like I've seen Dak when he doesn't have a stacked team. Like I'm out on that. I've seen Jared Goff when he doesn't have the best offensive line in the league. Out on that. Jalen's a good example. Like Jalen has AJ fucking Brown and Devontae Smith. What would he look like if he had a couple random guys. And Sirianni. Don't like that as much. Uh, I see. I think Dan Campbell and Goff wouldn't go as high in this exercise. McVay and Stafford, assuming Stafford's back was good, would go high. Dan Quinn, Jaden Daniels probably go high too. It's a good question. We're gonna end on that. That is a good question. Tell you who would go near the bottom would be like Dayball, Russell Wilson, Kellen Moore, whoever. Oh, D'Amico and CJ would go high. Harbaugh, Herbert would go high. Tua McDaniel would go low. Colts would go low. Titans would go low. I think the biggest swing would be the Lions, just because I like Dan Campbell, motivating whoever, but like Jared Goff, if everything's equal, don't love, can't move. Jared Goff on a stacked team, excellence. I'd say the same thing for Jalen, which again, I'm not bitching and moaning like, well, his team's his team. He won the Super Bowl. Jared Goff's team's his team. They win a bunch of games these last couple of years. But if you put one of these guys on, you know, you put Jared Goff on the Jags, don't like him as much.